Good morning, and welcome to the 4th Annual South Dakota Technology Showcase. I'm Vernon Brown of SDN Communications. On behalf of all of our sponsors, AT&T, the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, and SDN Communications, we thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come learn about the exciting innovations happening in our state and beyond. This event really got started, it was the brainstorm of AT&T's Northern Plains President, Cheryl Riley. 4 years ago, when she was still living in Wyoming, she contacted me to ask if SDN would partner with AT&T to showcase all the cool things happening in South Dakota as a way to not only create pride in our state, but also maybe attract businesses and business people to South Dakota. Well, I think it worked. We know that because Cheryl is now a proud South Dakotan. Yeah, that's great. You probably didn't notice it last year because she's always cool as a cucumber. Not much rattles Cheryl, but she was in the thick of her big move here. She now leads AT&T's Northern Plains efforts right from her home office just outside Sioux Falls, and we're pleased to call her a South Dakotan. I'd like to invite her up here for a welcome to get us kicked off this morning.
Good morning. That's, Vernon's always so hard to follow. That's really difficult. That's why we turned over the MC duties to Vernon this year, because y'all are tired of hearing from me, and he's just so good. But thank you so much for being here this morning. We're just thrilled that we're continuing this showcase event to talk about the great innovations going on in our state. I can say our state now. In the past, I always had to say this state, and now I can just say our state. And I am thrilled to be a South Dakotan. My boys are thrilled to be Brandon Lynx, so we're excited about it. And it's one of the things I noticed traveling in and out of South Dakota over the last several years is all the cool things going on, and it's amazing to me. So luckily we had a great partner with SDN and also with the South Dakota Chamber to talk about and showcase these technology innovations in our state. And so thank you all for being here today to talk about these, and I think we have a really great program. And I have to say thank you again to our partners, SDN Communications and the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, but especially to Nikki Gronley from SDN. Nikki, thank you. Without you, I don't think we'd be here today. And I'd also like to thank Marianne Boyd from the South Dakota Chamber. Marianne, see, she's out working. Marianne, really? Come on. Thank you. And my good friend Vernon here, who has been very instrumental in putting the program together. So with that, I'm going to sit down and shut up and listen. And thank you all for being here. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheryl. Typically, this event has really focused on the private sector. Today, we're starting with a different approach. Cheryl and I and the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce have the benefit of working regularly with our city governments across the state. As one who has worked in city government, I can tell you municipalities often get a bad rap. They're always under the microscope for what goes wrong. They can't hide from missteps. Fortunately, in South Dakota, they're doing many, many things right, and are innovators just as they are in the private sector. Our first panel discussion will focus on technologies local governments are implementing to improve citizens' daily lives. We're dispensing with lengthy introductions this year because we've included speaker bios on the programs. However, I do want to say a word about my friend and our moderator, Yvonne Taylor of the South Dakota Municipal League. I had the pleasure of serving on her board for several years. She is an example of an innovative leader. Whenever the state legislature rips the fabric of innovative city governments, she threads that needle and becomes the legislative seamstress for repairing local control. Please welcome Yvonne Taylor and her panel for South Dakota Smart Cities in Action.
That's fun. We don't get walk-on music very often in my world. welcome and thank you for being here. I'm pleased to be here with these two gentlemen. I'll tell you a little bit about the Municipal League. We are the association that represents cities and towns in South Dakota. And in a nutshell, our purpose is the cooperative improvement of municipal government. And so we provide a lot of services and programs that allow cities to work together to purchase and provide services and do things cooperatively. And these gentlemen are definitely good examples of people who are working at that level also. I want to introduce to you Jason Reisdorfer, who is the Director of Innovation and Technology with the City of Sioux Falls. And our elected official is Madison City Commissioner Mike Waldner, who also, in his real life, works in innovation and technology with the Bureau of Information and Technology at the state. So we want to start off with kind of a high-level view and get these folks talking. I do know both of these gentlemen are happy to answer questions, take questions, and I know they want this to be kind of a conversation with you all, and so they're willing to go in any direction that interests you. And so please, I guess if you have any questions, kind of raise your hand and we'll try to get our attention and we'll try to make this more of a conversation amongst the whole group. But to start off, from a high-level view from both of you, what do you think is driving technology and innovation in state and local government?
So for us, we've got a new mayor that's pretty techy, and he's interested in doing new and cool things. And so for us, it's really at the city level, it's being driven, kind of from the top down, I would say. A lot of times, I think in organizations, the technology a lot of times lives in the IT department, and so they're often selling ideas up. And we've got a progressive mayor that's casting a huge vision and just empowering the rest of the organization to drive it down. And so for that, it's just kind of a snowball effect that happens. And so we've got technology and innovation happening all over the city.
Well, for us, I guess on the state level, as well as on the city level, is our citizens. They're the ones who are really pushing for that technology. I think it's something like 90+ people have a cell phone, and also about 25% of those people who have a cell phone or a smartphone, that's their only means of internet access. And that might be their only means of access into state government or into your local governments. And so that's really one of the things that's really pushing it for us. And the same, it also comes with leadership all the way down throughout the organizations. I think it was former Governor Dugard that said he wanted citizens online, not in line. And I think that still holds true, certainly within state government.
And I know one of the things that concerns everybody in South Dakota is how do you do more with less? This is a state with very tight resources at all levels. How is technology helping you do more with less?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is business process improvements. That's where always looking for means that we can utilize technology to make a process better, make a process quicker, easier for the employees, easier for citizens. And so there's just a number of ways that it does help. You have to have that fine line because technology can also get very expensive as well. And just because you can do it with technology doesn't always mean you should. However, if you can, in the long run, get some benefits, save some monies down the road, 10 years, 20 years from now, certainly that's something to look into.
For us, we've got a very fixed budget, right? And the taxpayers do not like it if you go over the budget, So in terms of when we find new things, we can't just throw manpower at it. And I come from the private sector where if we knew the right thing had to happen, we just hired a person and made it happen. And in city government, local government, we have to like you said, do more with less. And so we're really relying on the data that tells us what we should do next. And that'll be kind of a common theme in 2020 for this administration is data-driven decision-making. And that really helps us prioritize. We can't do everything that we want to do, so we just have to do it in the right order. And we're using technology to help us decide that.
And then the other side of the picture, the only reason cities exist is to provide services to their citizens. How is technology making your services more accessible to your people?
So for us, we take that data and we just put it straight on the main page. And so for the first time in this city government, we've got a community dashboard, and we've got 10 measurable numbers that we track and update monthly. And when you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is once you start putting those numbers up and making it public facing. And so for us, I think that's all about the citizens. When they say how many potholes did you fill this month, right? Like the potholes, everybody loves talking about potholes. And so we just started tracking it and saying, here's what we're doing, and here's how many we're filling, and here's what, we do the same thing with crime, and the same thing with fire, and the same thing with parks, and a lot of these stats that people are saying, prove it. For us, it holds our employees accountable to perform at that level because it's public facing, and it also is really transparent for our citizens. And so that's just a good way. You put those numbers up and people just start to react to them without doing anything specific to drive them. So that's for us. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and that's kind of the theme that we're going with.
Well, in Madison, we don't have potholes, so I don't know what your problem is. No, certainly agree with a lot of those same things. We obviously with technology do the easy stuff first, get the website out there, make the website mobile, accessible. And one of the things that we've also used that's been a pretty good hit has been just simple texting. Nobody emails anymore. It's all about texting, and it's the immediacy of that texting. Not just all of the texting we did during our recent flooding that we just went through, but also texting about snow alerts. Hey, get your car off the streets, it'll get towed, you'll get a ticket. All of those type of things, and we've extended that into even just informational messages. So that's been really good, and as far as like some of the other apps and things such as that, future looking, what I'd like to get to is where we have maybe sensors, or at least at minimal, when a snowplow goes down and it plows my street, why don't I get a text? Why don't I get a text or a pop-up notification on my device that says, hey, your street's been cleared of snow? Some of those type of innovation and type of those ideas, why not? We need to keep pursuing and looking at some of those type of applications.
Okay. Jason, even in your bio, you talked about one of the first challenges you started dealing with as you came into your new position, and it is dealing with the public transit system in Sioux Falls. Can you tell us about that project?
Yeah, so like a year ago, I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary here. About a year ago, I was sitting in the Rotary downtown meeting, and Paul Tenhaken was presenting, and he looked over and he said, the first thing I'm going to do is put public transportation on Jason's desk and say, fix it. I'm like, I don't know anything about public transit. And so that was a shock, but he basically said, you got a $9 million budget and 185,000 people in the city. Just blow the thing up and start over from scratch. And so now I could start to speak that language, right? Like I don't know anything about public transit, so I don't really know how to incrementally improve it, but I'm fully capable of looking at it from a totally different perspective. And that's what we did. 10 months ago, I formed a team to solve this, and I was intentional about, I picked a librarian and a fire captain and a police battalion chief and somebody from the health department, and we formed this team, and you couldn't have any prior knowledge of transit. That was the rule. We all had to be on even playing field, and you just had to say, you had to have high energy, a positive outlook, and you couldn't say, this is how we've always done it, ever. Like as soon as you said that, you had to leave the room. So I formed this team with that in mind, and we've gone now 10 months on this thing, and what we've come to is, I think, going to revolutionize public transit. There's lots of cities and transportation planners all over the United States that are saying, we're going to pay close attention to what you guys are doing, because if it works for you, I think it can work for us. And the Cliff Notes version of what we're doing is just going to get rid of all public fixed routes as they exist and basically create a Uber for buses system where people can hail their ride on a bus, and it's like a big Uber bus share. We think we can save tons of money operationally because our buses drive around empty 95% of the time. You see 1 or 2 people in them, and so capitalizing on that is a totally different thing. And we use technology to do that, hopefully, if we find a good partner. So if anybody in the room wants to write us a bus app, we've got the idea, we just don't know how to implement it now. So, but yeah, that's one of the first things we're trying to solve, and it's just taking a really old problem and looking at it from a different way. That's what our office is kind of the champion of.
And you just referenced that a lot of times your buses are driving around empty. It's a small part of the population of Sioux Falls that uses the transit system. Why is it such an important goal?
So it's a very small part that use it, but I think these people are some of the most vulnerable population that use it, but they're also contributors. I mean, we have very low unemployment, and these folks all need to use transportation to get to work. And so for us, it's not only, people just don't want to ride the bus for fun. They're using it to get to work, to get to the hospital, to get to, daycare, to get to the grocery store. And, we all love our cars. We identified a stakeholder group when we were getting feedback from citizens as car lovers. And we wanted their input too, like, why do you love your car so much? And some of these people also love cars, they just can't afford a car. And so for us, it's the full picture. If you don't have these workers getting to work on time or getting to the healthcare, it just spins and snowballs into bigger issues. So, but we think that this thing is going to be cool enough. Like I said, if we can do this, it's going to pick me up a block from my house and take me to work with free Wi-Fi on the bus. I can answer 25 extra emails on the way for $3. I'll do that. So this whole room is going to be riding the bus pretty soon, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, I wish you'd come to Pierre. Can I get on your route? And Mike, I think a city the size of Madison probably doesn't have a public transit system set up like that, but technology is probably changing how people get around. How is that working in a smaller city?
Well, I want to pick up on what he said as far as like car lovers. We're South Dakotans. We're used to driving 20, 30 miles. Some students, they're on the bus for 45 minutes sometimes just to go to school every day. So we are car lovers. However, I stood in front of a class at DSU and I asked these young students, fresh minds of the United States, I said, how many of you would give up your car if, let's just say, you never had to have a car payment or anything, and through your app, you could just Uber, Lyft, or however, and say, hey, at 8 o'clock, I want you to pick me up at this location and take me to that location through completely autonomous vehicles. And it was amazing. It was about 50-50. There was a number of the farm kids that were like, hey, there's no way you're getting rid of my truck. I'm going to keep my truck, and that's the way it's going to be. However, there was also a number of them that really started thinking about it and said, even in a community the size of Madison, we have, like every university, parking issues. Where do we park all of our students' cars as they come in? How do we do that? Using autonomous vehicles so that maybe we have a parking lot out part of town, and then autonomously these vehicles shuttle people back and forth. Call it a bus if you want, call it a shuttle. So that's some of the things that we've been looking at. Obviously, as a smaller town, it's harder to get Uber and Lyft to come into our town. We're getting our ordinances in place for that type of transportation. That's coming real soon. But if Uber and Lyft don't come to towns, less population of 10,000, then I'm going to turn to DSU and find a student, find somebody to write an app that will do those type of hail riding, calling for those vehicles for our smaller communities. So that's some of the things, I guess, that we're looking at.
They can do it for us first if you want.
Stay in line.
And, you know, we've heard that Jason has the title he has, and there's obviously now an innovation department. Madison probably doesn't have a whole department they can dedicate to that kind of thing. But how are your employees adapting new technologies and working to be innovative?
Yeah, you could have the best technology in the world, the most technology, the biggest budget, but if you don't have people, it's not going to work. It always comes down to that person, the people, the technicians, the users, the end user. It always comes down to that. So that's a huge critical part of it. And we're fortunate in Madison. A lot of our employees are DSU grads. They get technology. They understand technology. They don't always embrace it like many of us in this room. There's certain technologies that we don't embrace. Obviously, the change mechanism of it. Oh, well, now I have to use this tablet and I have to click these things every time I go out and do a work order. Some of those changes we just have to continually work through. However, I think our directors and certainly myself, I always pay attention to that end user, if you will, the boots on the ground that's in the street, that's in the daily grind. And just simply ask them, hey, how can technology make your life better? How can we do your job better through technology and using IT to do that?
Okay, thank you. And Jason, talk a little bit about, this is a new idea really even for South Dakota, having just a team of technology and innovation folks. Talk about your office and your crew.
10 months ago, we had a team of 1. Now we have a team of 2. And as of the last budget, we just actually asked council to approve, which they did, our very first city data analyst. So that'll live on our innovation team as well. I have the IT department, the GIS department, and the communications and marketing department. And so those three teams used to be thought of as kind of service departments where they just kind of sat around, waited for requests to come in, and then they fulfill them. And we're really trying to shift that into be a more strategic department. IT needs a seat at the strategic table when we're talking about initiatives. And so our true I team is really small, but our job is to go out and break down these silos of all these different departments. There's no reason health has to have their own IT and their own innovation. We can empower them to think of a community-wide innovation mindset. And so we're doing that with the fire department, for example. You know, they have the same limited resources in terms of FTEs as anybody does, and so they have to do more with less. And so we've built a data analytics tool that helps them prioritize which buildings to inspect for fire inspections on the higher risk level. And instead of just canvassing the whole city, they can isolate those higher risk. That's an example of innovation, but you know, we helped that, but they're going to own it. And so innovation doesn't have to live just in one little team. I think it should live, you know, organizational wide. But pretty soon we'll have 4 people, and then we can really start doing some good work.
Thank you. Coming up in the program, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and big data. Can you talk a little bit about how that's working in Sioux Falls?
So there's an organization called What Works Cities, and they have developed a criteria of like 58 very specific rules of local government. And if you achieve a certain number of these, you get What Works City certification. And these all have to deal with using data to drive decisions. Using data to set policy. And so, you know, a lot of times I'm new to this, but our city budget was created just out of gut instincts in departments to say, I need this, and I think I need this, and I kind of want to do this. And now we're hoping to create a policy-driven decision based on the data that says, we need this FTE and here's why. It's because of this number of things that are happening differently. And so for us, big data really comes down to using that to drive decisions. We're also, we set up we've got an open data portal, and that's another one of the requirements, and we want to be able to share this data. We think that unlike the private sector, which is like if you have this idea and you figure something out, you kind of keep it to yourself and keep it private. In local government, if one city figures something out, they like to share that with another city. And so we want to be as open and transparent as we can, so that if we see something else going on in another city, we can employ it in our city, and if they see something we're doing, they can take it to theirs. So for us, it's the data piece of it is really about being open and making it accessible and making it clean and usable, and then partnering with, like we're partnering with USD Beacom School right now. They've got a USD or a data analytics class that's going to work on a data project for the city of Sioux Falls for the whole semester. And so we're looking for partnership opportunities, with DSU and USD and some of these schools to help us put the manpower behind some of the data analytics work. Because like I said, we're just starting with a team of one this next budget cycle and growing it from there.
And Mike, like most of our city officials, our city elected officials, very few are full-time in South Dakota, and so they have to have day jobs. And the day job for Mike is the project manager for South Dakota FirstNet. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, real briefly, FirstNet is a mobile broadband network for first responders, police, fire, EMS, your public safety answering points, your 911 centers. And what it does is it allows priority and preemption to be given on the mobile data networks or mobile networks all across South Dakota, the 5 territories, and Washington, D.C. My responsibility is just to make sure that that gets implemented the way that we need it to be implemented within South Dakota. Now, briefly, that's a huge project. AT&T was the vendor that won the contract in order to provide and build out this network that they call FirstNet. And here in South Dakota, they have committed to the governor 38 new cell sites, 38 new towers across South Dakota. We've been told that it'll be implemented by 2020, all 38 of them. We're not sure that they're going to make all 38 of them. Those of you in the room that know about regulations on cell towers and things, it takes a little time to get all the permitting and everything done, but we're hopeful that they do get that done. From a business and citizen perspective, real briefly, is that when the law enforcement or police, fire, EMS, when they're not using those towers, guess what? Us citizens, our visitors to our state, businesses can then also utilize that technology and those increased coverage, increased capacity across South Dakota. So that part of it I'm excited about.
Okay. I think we've kind of covered the topics we had planned to talk about with you folks. And unless you want them to start making things up, maybe we'll have some questions. Chris.
Sensors that you need to deploy to create new data to help solve some of those questions? Talk about that.
Yeah, so the question was, are there new data streams, new data sets that are coming? We anticipate a ton of them, especially with 5G implementation. One of the first things that we're starting with is we're going to put nodes on our light poles, and these nodes are going to have sensors that can track everything from pollen count to mosquitoes and which ones have West Nile and noise and gunshot detection and all these things. We're swimming in data. Like, we've got data everywhere, and we're gonna have more coming. That's the whole, this 5G is gonna like take a 2-lane highway of data transfer and turn it into a 20-lane highway, which means there's gonna be more devices and more, the Internet of Things, like the Internet of people, like everything's gonna rely on data or generate data. And so we're really trying to make this first effort in getting ahead of it and hire this data analyst, data scientist. We think that could be a whole new department in the city eventually, with a chief information officer and a team of data analysts and harnessing that. I mean, it's great that we're tracking this stuff, but what are we going to do with it? And so I think you're exactly right. There's going to be streams and streams of data, and then harnessing them and making it useful to tell this story and make this decision is going to be the key. And that's really what we're planting the seed with when we're getting started with this data analyst position.
A little finer point on the question. So at this point, do you have some specific plans for specific types of sensors for specific data? Or were you just talking about kind of the realm of what's possible?
We've got 4 or 5 priorities that are living in other departments. Police, for example, would be highly interested in this gunshot detection. The health department's very interested in this mosquito sensor. They trap these mosquitoes now in actual traps and have to bring them into a lab and do this thing. And so they're hoping that the very specific data that we collect could help them streamline their process and free up FTEs to do other things. And so for us, there is this huge list of generic things, and we're going to have to really work to prioritize which things they will be tracking first. But and these sensors are still being developed, and there's lots of companies that are fighting for this space and these tools, and we're comfortable with the pilot mentality where we're going to test 10 of these downtown with a certain type of sensor. We're going to go test another 10 of these, on the west part of town with a different kind of sensor, and I think we'll start to understand which ones make the most sense. The very practical one that we're going to do first is sensors that are light-based, that we're implementing LED lights in all these poles at the very same time. And we think we can save like 50% of the energy cost by dimming them down like between 11 and 5 a.m., in low peak hours, rather than just having it blast full speed, the whole time. And so for us, it's prioritization on limited resources that's going to drive the decision on what sensor we're going to put in first.
I want to echo that as well. I mean, the other thing on the FirstNet side that I hear a lot of is also the Internet of life-saving things, such as the sensors on every fire truck. So now I know where all the fire trucks are. My police officers, if I'm in a serious incident, where's my backup? How close is my backup? Game fish and park, some of those game wardens, it's 40, 50, 60 miles before their backup can even come close. And so a lot of times that situational awareness needs to come into play, and that's huge in the law enforcement, public safety side of things. And we've done a lot of those technologies as far as implementing, certainly in the public safety world, but even in like the smart meters, where instead of having to send an individual to do a meter disconnect, why don't just do that remotely? Click a button, turn it off. The person says, oh man, my power went off. Okay, well, grab their smartphone, make the payment, we see the payment, we turn it back on. All of that could happen within 5 minutes. Now the person goes, they pull the meter, it might be the next day. So now they're out power the whole day. And so there's some of those things, but I'll also say, the key to this, or the trick to it, is finding what sensors, should we implement first? What's the easy wins? What's maybe the less expensive to be able to implement, and then just grow it from there.
Hi, Theron McChesney with SDN. So I was thinking my first job out of college, I didn't have email. I was given a pager and a landline to communicate with my employer. How has communication with the citizens changed in city government? I know Jason talked a little bit about the open data portal. What other innovations are occurring in that area to both of you? Go ahead.
Well, obviously we're doing the push with our texting as well, but I don't know, call me crazy or something. My cell phone's even on the website. So I get enough robocalls, so it doesn't matter if it's anybody else calling, go ahead. But so I think it's been a lot more engaging with a number of citizens, just from the fact that they know that they can text me. They know that they can text me and ask me questions. They know that they can send an email or fill out a form on the website and communicate directly with that department they know that they can do all of those type of things. Is that what you were talking, like with the direct citizen interaction? And the cool thing is they can interact directly with our departments as well. I mean, they don't have to come just to me, but certainly that's an avenue.
And so I came from a private sector company that was Amazon based. And so a lot of my basis of customer service and user interaction is based around the Amazon model. And what we learned from that is that these people want to answer their questions themselves, or they want to research it themselves. They want to find it out for themselves. And so for us, we're putting a big emphasis on when people are calling in and asking for these things, let's document that and figure out what the things that are they're getting asked over and over again, and then build a FAQ page so that they can research it themselves. The app that we created to fix these potholes has been a huge home run because it's a two-way interaction. In previous systems, they call in and they might not have the right person on the line, and then they get transferred, and the anxiety just goes up every time you transfer it. And this engagement tool that we have is a two-way communication where somebody from the streets department takes a look at this picture of the pothole that they sent. They can respond to this person. That person gets an email within 24 hours that said, "I hear you." Right? I hear what you're saying. And that just takes the anxiety down a notch right from the start. And then, and then they follow up that this is going to get done next week. And then another follow up that says this is done. And that never happened before. When you called in, and nobody likes to call in, everybody likes to text or email or whatever. This app of this two-way communication, opening that two-way communication has been just a huge home run. And I think you can get that same type of experience in chat bots and chat funnels, and the quicker the response is and the more direct that it is, the customer service scores and feedback just goes up tremendously. So we're trying to implement a lot of Amazon best practices in local government. How do we balance innovation and security? So I was talking before this, when the mayor asked me to do this, I said, warning, I don't know anything about IT. Okay, cool, you're gonna lead the department. He said, don't worry, we've got a great IT manager in place, and we do in the city. John Clemmy's fantastic. We're making a really, really strong effort in cybersecurity, and we're doing a lot of penetration testing, and we've partnered with I think DSU on some dark web initiatives, and we're putting a lot of resources in that, and we're really, the thing that we're most vulnerable at, I think, is some of the phishing scams that's coming through emails that look just so real. And so we're testing those. We're sending kind of fake tests to our employees often. Finance is finally, they're getting the brunt of it because they control the money, and so it's really, I told John, I said, I'm just going to keep pushing on these cool things. You just make sure we don't screw anything up. And so I think it's not any one person's job. I think it's a whole team's worth of jobs, but not everybody can be going after the shiny squirrel. So I do that, and then everybody else takes care of the security. So far, so good.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Any more questions? No? Oh, hold on, right here.
Good. Being from Madison and a close relationship with DSU, what do you see as opportunities, and you mentioned relative to the university in South Dakota State, for the colleges to participate, especially with local government and maybe even the counties, but basically government in general, as to what they might be able to take on as as projects that would be beneficial?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's one of the areas where I think all of us in South Dakota really need to tap in. We need to look more and more at our universities. They're doing some great research, great development on a national level. So let's utilize that here locally. And specifically, speaking of the security issues, you know, Sioux Falls has already partnered with DSU doing some things. And I think that these universities can step in to the local university or local municipalities and counties and say, hey, listen, we need to get security in your mindset, because a lot of these places, they're like, I'm Burke, South Dakota, nobody's worried about hacking us. Well, that's not true. They are, and they're looking at every municipality. And so I think that's, you know, one specific area where municipalities and counties can take advantage of that.
The red light's flashing here, so we're done. But we gave USD, the Beacom School, 2 very specific projects. We said we have 20% of our healthcare, we have Falls Community Health, 20% of the appointments back out of the appointment. That 20% is worth an entire doctor's salary for Falls Community Health. Can you take our data and write a prescriptive data analytics algorithm to predict those 20%? What is causing these people to back out? And we just gave them that toolkit, and they're using our data to try to solve that problem. And we gave another class, we spend $1 million a year on salt, and we're having potholes. What's the right amount of salt to put on the road based on various conditions? And just like set them loose. And so these schools are now getting to use real life, it's not synthetic data, it's real life data to solve a real problem. And these people are going to get to interact in a way that's really meaningful with local government and solve real issues. So it's the first time we've done it, and we hope it's going to be a huge success, and we hope we can grow that to other schools in the area too.
Okay, my last thing, don't be afraid to reach out to those universities either. If you have a problem or an issue, you think IT or something can be solved, reach out to those universities. They're not going to sit and always go to every single town and say, hey, we got this, we can help you. Go the other way. Reach out to them. They'll listen.
Great advice, Mike. Thank you very much, Jason, Mike, Yvonne. What a great way to start the morning. Thank you.